If you come into town and drive through Houghton and then onto the bridge and you can see that smelter in its location, it is a very present physical thing on the landscape, and it makes a very reasonable, very logical node to draw visitors in to start telling them the story of copper in the copper country.
Smelter was built in 1898 during the peak of the copper boom here in the area. Copper mining was high and the need for copper in the United States was getting very big. Smelting is when you take the ore from the mine and you bring it to the stamp mill, and from there, after it's crushed, it comes down here. They put it all into big furnaces and they melt all the copper and take all the garbage out of it, and then they put it into ingot molds and they ship it all over the United States and all over the world to make pipes and wires. It's the history for our kids. There's no more mining in the area, yet there's a lot of mining memorabilia, and we've got the Quincy Hoist House and we've got some mine tours, and they need to know what the whole process was and what their ancestors did to keep this community growing. We started 6 years ago, and at that time it was all falling down, and our vision then was to create awareness to the public that we were no longer going to just let it fall down, that we wanted to preserve it. And as we go forward, that's still our goal. We do want to get lighting in some of the buildings. We don't want to see any more destruction happen to any of the buildings.
And that in itself is an accomplishment. Now it's the point where we want to start turning it more into a museum quality.
I think there are some people in the community who are hostile to it, and I think there are many people in the community who just don't understand what's going on.
The complaints people had was that when they saw it before all the work was done, it did look like junk, and you know, why keep something like that and not tear it down and use it for something else.
People look at, they say, why should we put money into that? Why not just tear it down, because it was in such bad state that I think they looked at it like, you know, it's just going to take too much money to do it, and the resources could be used better somewhere else.
Well, I was at home because it happened after 10 o'clock at night, and about 10:30 at night I got a phone call from a friend who said the Quincy Smelter's on fire, and it was sad. But when I drove down my street, I could see the flames, and I immediately went over to Houghton and took pictures from that side, and then came back down, and it was a sad night.
When the report came back from the fire marshal, they said fire of undetermined origin.
Well, nobody ever proved that it's arson. However, when a building goes up in flames and there's no reason for it, we can only assume that. And yes, we did lose the carpenter shop.
One of the things I was able to do as a professor was to coordinate a group of student volunteers after the tragic fire that burned the carpenter shop in 2010. We went out and we did a forensic archaeology excavation and recording of the remains of the building.
They also took out timbers and cross beams and stuff to save those so that we could show people how buildings were built way back in 1898. And they did a lot of very dirty work to salvage what they could out of it.
I've been involved in the Quincy Smelter on and off over the years for many years now, and generally supporting students in their efforts to help out with the preservation effort, learn about the history of the smelter, and help translate that information into public activities.
It's unique in that so many of the buildings are not just intact, but the interiors are very, very well kept. There was destruction in some of the buildings, but certainly not all of them. And it's unique as it is the most complete smelter grounds of all the buildings, not just in the United States, but probably in the world.
I think the smelter is an incredible asset in terms of its location, its integrity, the drama represented in the architecture and the facility. Walking around there with people from the community, their interest, their link to the place is tangible.
Well, we're offering the tours because we want people to see what our ancestors, and I mean our collective ancestors, were able to do in terms of building an industry basically from scratch in the 1840s to the late 1960s. And you're seeing the height of American industrialization at that time.
Several of my relatives did work there. My grandfather did, and I had a great uncle that worked there. In fact, he died falling off one of the smokestacks. When you go through there and see the machinery and you think about the heat that was there, it was a very dangerous place, but really overall they didn't have a lot of accidents.
As an archaeologist and as someone who's really committed to public archaeology being where we take really public places that people care about, and we do archaeology in them where the science and the history research is equally performance art. And it creates venue, it creates space for people to come in and talk about heritage, both learning new things that we're able to discover through archaeology, through oral history, through these different kinds of research, but also coming to the table to have conversations about what matters to them, about how the site should be saved, what should it look like.
I'm a lifelong resident of this community, so I really wanted to see the smelter saved.
In my long-term vision, the idea would be that the facility doesn't mothball, but it becomes a continuing, ongoing place to do activities that blend research, that blend school children, that blend college students, that blend seniors in the community, where people come out and they interact with the place and its interpretation as a big collective exchange of ideas on an ongoing basis. It doesn't become a static monument.
Isle Royale, if everything goes through, would be east of here, which is behind me, in the open area, and that's where they would build their headquarters if everything goes through in terms of purchasing the smelter site and then their financing that they would have to do.
This would be a central place for people to come and as a start for the rest of the Keweenaw National Park for the sites to visit. And in fact, if it happens, it would be the very first time there would be a joint venture between two national parks.
It would be a win for the city of Houghton. It would be a win for us. We would tie the two parks together, and it would be great.
A lot happened at the Quincy Smelter through its operation, and its existence is really significant to the history of the community.
If the parents don't keep talking about it, they aren't going to know the history of the area or what their ancestors did. They see it as a pile of old buildings that they used to run through, and they don't really know the history behind it.
I do have a passion for history, and my husband has a passion for history, and that probably fuels mine. So, but yes, I do have a passion for history. I grew up here. This is my history.
That site, with all of its presence and its monumental architecture and intact machinery, tells a story so well. It'd be such a wonderful anchor point within our community's network of heritage that I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able to carry this football all the way into the end zone in terms of our planning. What I think and what I would hope that the site will be preserved, and it seems like patience has paid off as energy continues to build, but it's a big project, and big projects scare people because they're not to be taken lightly. But I think we've made enough progress in the effort that people are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel.